Hi, everybody. My name is Thomas.
I'm Amber.
And this is So What Happens Next, a show where at least one of us watches a movie for the first time, but not before trying to guess what it's about. Then we watch it, and then we give you our first impressions and what we maybe got right, maybe got wrong, some laughs, and some pretty great discussion about some of these movies in between. This week, we're doing one of my all-time favorites, Seven Samurai, a film by Akira Kurisawa from 1954. All right. So, Amber, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm just, this whole quarantine thing is just going on for too long. But, we're hanging in there. We got our movies to watch. We've got podcast episodes to do. So,
oh, yeah.
It's all worth it in the end.
I'm really hoping that we get some reprieve from this. I mean, I'm hoping that by the time this episode comes out, it's maybe over. But at this rate, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
That all being said, this is a great movie to watch, I think, in quarantine, if for any reason, because it's like 3 hours long.
Yeah, so you have the time. We all have the time. Unless you're working. If you are working, I totally feel ya. I'm still working.
Yeah, I'm working from home, but Amber here has been deemed essential, so.
Yeah, so anyone that's an essential worker, I feel ya, and hope you're staying safe and healthy out there.
Yeah. Definitely. But if you're not and you got some time and you want to listen to a podcast and maybe enjoy a cool movie in between, this is definitely one to kill some time. So as always, Amber, I got 5 things up on the board for what this movie's about.
All right, hit me.
All right. So this is not our first rodeo with this director, but it is a film by Akira Kurosawa. So if you've listened to our previous episode on the movie Ran, which is a great and arguably equally as long movie by that director. This is sort of the movie that, there were Oscar considerations for this guy. This is like his movie. If Ran is like his magnum opus, this is the movie that let that happen. So it's filmed by Akira Kurosawa. It involves some poor broke ass samurai. So these aren't like big warrior guys. They're just they might as well be hobos with swords.
Okay.
The movie, like I said, is over 3 hours long, so you got plenty of time to make up whatever you want to happen in this movie. It's got bandits, and it revolves around one little village. So those are your 5 things. What do you think this movie might be about?
I think this movie might be about 7 samurai that decide to defend this little village that they know nothing about against possibly the Empire. And so I don't know if they're being taken over by, a neighboring, or not neighboring empire, but someone who's kind of coming in to invade them from a different country or something. And they're like, oh, we gotta, help these people because, they're poor and their own, their own king or whomever is not going to come and save them because they're, basically peasants. So they're, lesser than. But I definitely feel like it's going to revolve around their relationship between each other. And kind of like how, they're all friends, they're all buddies, they've known each other for a while. Maybe go a little bit into each person's backstory, and then you have the climax where it's this big fight against them in some army. Mm-hmm. And there's definitely going to be maybe a lot of them or just a few of them that die as a result.
Okay. I mean,
just judging from, the previous movie that we had seen, to where a lot of the major characters, they died.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, you're not wrong. Ran
Yeah.
definitely has its share of tragedy.
And not just like the major characters, but like, you know, the fight scenes with like the
Right.
armies just going at it. It's like there was a lot of death.
Okay. No, that's an interesting, like, that's a cool take on this movie. I mean, I'll admit straight up, like, you're right and you're wrong about some things.
Okay.
I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Obviously, like I've said already, I've seen this movie. Anecdotally, I think this movie was a movie we watched over the course of 3 hours at like midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning in college or something like that. A friend just put it on, and if you're listening, thank you for introducing me to this movie. I'm happy to say I own it now and am just loving the hell out of it. But it is long, but it's one of those ones where I just remember sitting there, eyes open, like the whole 3 hours going, I gotta see how this goes. It's similar to Ran. I'm like, I gotta see how this goes. And it's one of those movies that pulls you in and keeps you held on. And it even came out in like 1954. Like, this isn't like a new movie by any means. Mm-hmm. But I will also say that this movie is so classic that, you know, a Western that is equally as famous has come out, has been remade. That is like the same or similar plot. And it's one of these things where it's just like, this movie had a very long-lasting effect, I think, on pop culture and movies in general, to where it's in television series, whether it's a kid's show, an adult show, whatever. Like, this plot has been used so many times, and it's great. And I think every time it happens, it's pretty enjoyable. Like, those happen to be some of the favorite episodes of shows of mine and things like that.
Has there been a remake done on this?
I don't know if there's been a remake done on this.
Okay. I thought there was, but
there might have been. I hope there's not.
It's probably like The Last Samurai I'm thinking of, which has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I think that's Tom Cruise pretending to be a samurai or something. I don't know.
This one is way better.
I mean, I haven't seen The Last Samurai, but I would bet any money that Seven Samurai greatly outweighs.
Yeah, it just like slashes it.
Oh yeah, it cuts it in twain.
No pun intended.
But yeah, so if you guys give us a couple minutes here, we're going to go ahead and watch the trailer for this movie, and then we're going to give you some final thoughts before we dive on in. All right. What did you think, Amber?
That was pretty intense.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm excited to see those fight scenes. I bet like he really did make them like fight in the rain and mud.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
the trailer. So if you haven't seen the trailer for this movie, which I really wouldn't be surprised if you haven't, it's very old timey, but it's all in Japanese, and it's kind of trying to go like, you know, the movie's got action, it's got fighting, it's got heroism, it's got romance, and it's got all this crazy stuff. But it's like in Japanese. Yeah, it kind of
reminds me of Citizen Kane.
Yeah, same here. It kind of has that like, oh yeah, we're, you know, it's got this, it's got that. Who is Kane? And in this movie, it's like, who are these 7 men?
Yeah, and it introduces like the actors to the viewers, and it's pretty nice.
Who, I swear, I'll have to check it, but I'm pretty sure like the first guy that's introduced, I'm pretty sure he's in the original Godzilla.
Yeah.
I think he plays...
He does look familiar.
I think he plays the female lead's father who wants her to marry Dr. Serizawa.
Yeah, I remember that one.
I'm pretty sure that's who he is. I'm going to check it while we watch it, but I'm like 70% sure it's him.
Yeah. But it almost seems like I'm mostly right about my prediction for this film.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit you're on target somewhat. Like, there's some things you did get wrong, but like you're more or less on target for it. And I think you're gonna like this movie. Like, you know, I think, you know, if you liked Ran, even just from an artistic perspective, you'll really like this one. And I mean, one of the things that Ran really had going for it was in color, and this movie's not.
Yeah. So
for a modern audience, this movie has to play like double effort, I feel like, to really get you engaged in it, you know? Because we've all grown up with colored television, colored movies. Black and white was like that weird novelty thing that just kind of stuck around. So after seeing the trailer, though, any final thoughts before we dive into the movie?
Not really, just ready to go ahead and see it.
All right.
See what it's all about.
Yeah, same here. I'm really ready to rewatch this movie. It's been a long time, so I'm definitely happy to watch it, not at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever time it was. So join us, if you will, as we dive right into Seven Samurai. All right, we are back, everybody. So, what'd you think?
So here's the deal. I liked Ran a lot more.
Whoa,
and maybe it was
okay.
just because I was already familiar with the story of King Lear.
Yeah.
And it was also in color too. So it really helped with like the vibrancy of like the country.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of good shots that they had in Ran. But in this film, I feel like it was a lot more like a drama film.
Right.
And so there was a lot of people talking, you know, back and forth. And then a lot of course, like politics going on that you have between like the bandits and then the villagers and then even the samurais. And so there's kind of like this hierarchy that they don't really go into detail of, but it's there. Because you have people that are like, oh, like I'm just a poor farmer and I wish I was like a samurai.
I did not expect, like, because in my opinion, like they're very close, but I just like this movie better.
Okay.
Because I felt like with Ran, there's a lot. I mean, it's so difficult to get into this movie because it is over 3 hours long. I mean, even with if you cut the intermission, it's in the middle of this movie because it's, you know, back from the days where that happened.
It is also long. And maybe the other movie was long too. I don't remember the exact.
It's not as long
length.
as this.
Okay.
Even without the intermission, I don't believe it's this long.
Yeah.
I think it's upwards of 2 hours. The Ran was upwards of 2 hours, but this one was definitely like, I mean, this was I think 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And it's a lot, but I guess to me, this movie, nothing that happens in it is wasted time to me. So like that, like with Ran or with, I mean, all movies nowadays, I mean, any period. I mean, even Citizen Kane had this, there were scenes where it's like, if you cut it, who cares? You know, you don't necessarily have to cut it. I'm not
like
saying
there's this
cut
little
it.
bit that they do something, they say something, and then it's just that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that it's like they're useless or there's in modern movies or just other movies in general, like scenes that don't need to be there. Why'd they put that there? They should have cut it. It's just that in this movie, every single scene does something to the characters or the plot or just all of it. I mean, take for instance, like you have this romance between, you know, the younger samurai and then a local farm girl, and it like that. At first, you're kind of like, does this really need to be here? I guess we're just playing a romantic angle, but by the end of it, it has an impact because it's sort of what they used to show that, yeah, you know, spoilers for this movie, even though we kind of won, we kind of lost. Like, we didn't actually win anything here. These guys, these farmers did.
Yeah.
But we can jump into the movie a little bit just for you guys listening. So this movie is very, very long, as we talked about. It happened to be this... if you've seen the movie The Magnificent Seven from 1960, or I guess they remade it, I think, in 2016, This is the movie that inspired that. Same exact deal. I mean, I've never seen The Magnificent Seven, but I know that it's the same movie, just with cowboys instead of samurai.
Yeah.
So you have like these 7 cowboys help a town defend them from bandits or whatever, right? But this is where that started. So this inspired that. And I mean, one of the big things too is if you haven't seen Magnificent Seven, but you happen to have seen a little movie by Disney and Pixar called A Bug's Life, then you also understand the plot of this movie. As we sort of kept noting throughout this one, A Bug's Life is basically 7 samurai with bugs.
The bandits are the grasshoppers, the ants are the farmers.
Yep, and the 7 samurai are the circus folk. Though in that movie, they're not actually warriors, but they are like, in this one, they are totally samurai. Like, they're not really faking it. I mean, one of them is, but not like to a degree where he's useless.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically this movie is about a group of farmers that are being periodically harassed by these bandits who are taking their food.
By these bandits.
Yeah. And the bandits say like, okay, like we're gonna come to your village, we're gonna take everything because you don't have anything right now. And they're like, if you take everything, we will literally die. We have no food. And they're just like, too fucking bad. We're gonna do it anyway. We'll see you in a little while. So the farmer's like, shit, you know, we gotta get together and figure something out because we gotta fight these guys back. And so a small group of them led by this guy, I believe his name is Rikichi. He and his compatriots go to like the town, kind of like they do in Bug's Life, and they go and they find they're trying to get some samurai together, but these guys are broke as hell, so all they can really offer them is like food and a place to stay. So they sort of get these like 7 Ronin-esque samurai together. 6 samurai and a dude. His name is Kikuchio, who is like a guy pretending to be a samurai, basically, but he just wants to have the glory and all that. They get them together to help defend their town, and the movie is basically you see it in so many television shows and movies and whatnot. It's the samurai not just defending their town, but also like, hey, we're gonna teach you guys how to fight because we can't do this alone. We're gonna like set up traps. We're gonna set up like barricades and all this other shit. We're gonna work together and we're gonna make this happen. And I think this movie, when you try to take it at like an action movie kind of type thing, is it's boring at that point. But when you look at this as like, I don't know, I guess to me this movie kind of hits sort of like you're looking at like people, right? Like I'm looking at different aspects of just what it is to be a person. And I mean, you have these people afraid, and then you get to see them really happy, you get to see them hyped up, you get to see them really sad, in love, angry. I mean, there's so much in this movie that plays with emotion, and Rand totally did this too. I mean, props to Kurisawa, because like he just is killing it with portraying like human emotion.
In Rand there was a lot more grief and sadness over losing a kingdom and then also losing a son or multiple sons, whereas in this case this movie was more, at least in the beginning, it was definitely sadness because they couldn't do anything about their situation. Mm-hmm. Like, especially in the beginning, they go to the old man, who's kind of like this person they go to.
He's the village elder.
Yeah, he's the village elder. And they ask for his advice as to what to do about this bandit issue. And he says, well, this other village who had the same issue, they hired a bunch of samurais, but because we're so poor, he's like, you can only bribe them with food. So I suggest you go get hungry samurai.
Yeah. Which they kind of do. I mean, one of them, he totally is. Like, he basically shows up to someone's house. He's like, if you feed me, I'll chop wood and stuff for you. And, like, that's just what he does.
Yeah. But there was that one scene with Rikuchi and the timid old man who was crying, the entire time.
Manzo,
and
I think.
He was supposed to be, maybe this was later on, but he was supposed to be taking care of like this pot of rice that they had as like a bargaining chip, and he ends up losing it.
Yeah.
And they just like go at it. Like the other guy is yelling at him and he's crying. He's just like, this is all that we have. Mm-hmm. And like, we would have to go back to the village just to get more.
And I love that scene because it shows like two really dramatic sides of emotion, right? Like almost hyperbolically so. Like you have on the one hand, like everybody is upset that they have to do this, right? But on the one hand, you have our sort of main farmer guy, Rikuchio, whatever. The names are really tough in this movie to follow for people who aren't Japanese, I think. But at least for me, I'm not going to put that on everybody. But you have our kind of main farmer who he is livid. Like he is borderline beating the shit out of this his partner here. And this other guy is like in tears. Like he's in tears when he walks in the room. And you get this, in an objective way, you get this like portrayal of the pathetic, right? Like not just the other guy crying. I don't mean this in like a derogatory way or anything, but you get like before anybody even walks in, he's already crying. And he's just sitting there like, oh my God, this sucks. Like everything's ruined. And instead of like doing anything about it, he just is sitting there crying. And then you get kind of our main farmer.
And that's how they all were in the beginning, just sitting in a circle, crying and huddling together. And a few of them were just like, we might as well kill ourselves because there's nothing we can do about it. Whereas there's maybe a few people that were just like, we need to, do something about this. And
that scene with the rice, though, ends in such a... it ends in such a anti-foreshadowing way in kind of a strange manner, because it's like it ends with him yelling at our timid farmer, and the timid farmer proceeding to just pick up each grain of rice one by one by one. And the shot's great because it's like from the floor and you just see his hand picking up each individual grain, which you could argue is like kind of a futile effort. Like when you clean up, like you're trying to save this rice to continue to eat it. It's on the dirty floor. The only way you're going to get it is to pick it up piece by piece by piece. And there's hundreds, 1,000 grains of rice on the ground. It's ultimately like a futile effort. I mean, you could do it, but how much time, how much energy is it going to take, and is it worth it? And I think that shot alone really emulates this is how they feel, whether they're angry or they're sad or whatever. They feel like we're doing all this work, and is it going to even be worth it? You know, are these samurai going to actually help us? Are we going to get any samurai to come? But, you know, they do. Otherwise, there's not a movie. They have to get at least 7 of them. So, you know, it ultimately works. They get enough guys and they go back. And, I mean, we don't need to get into every single introduction of the samurai, but I think the 2 that really stick out to me are like the silent samurai when he fights the guy with the sticks and then ultimately kills him. That was cool. Like, that was just such a cool scene. He doesn't want to kill this guy. This guy's all up in his face.
But once you take that sword out,
it's on. And the big guy takes his sword out, and in one move, he's dead. And there, our sort of head guy here, who is Takeshi Shimura, which probably is a name that doesn't mean a lot to really anyone. I mean, I know the name alone it's not much to recognize for myself even, but he actually is in, if you're like a fan like me of these movies, he's in a ton of the Godzilla movies, including the original one. He plays the father in the original Godzilla movie, which I thought so. This movie also stars Toshiro Mifune, who, if you've seen other Kurisawa films, he is Yojimbo in that movie. He is, you know, he's sort of our not samurai. Takashi Shimura's character is named Kanbei, and he's sort of like, the way they introduce him is he just fakes being a monk to save a child and like comes in, like kills a burglar in like nothing time and then walks out and everything's fine. And it just, the way they introduce these characters is great because they do it, again, props to Kurosawa, because he's introducing these characters in like, this is who they are. With the exception, I think, of Kikuchio, Mifune's character, because it's sort of like he's the one that really develops. And he gets a nice, I mean, this movie is so like, you know, if someone told me like pick between Citizen Kane or this movie as like greatest movie of all time, I might have to say this one, just because the way, at least as far as like developing the characters go, is there's so much going on. I mean, you have Kikuchio being paralleled with Kanbei's young student that kind of comes on board, and you have sort of both of them wanting the same thing, but one of them is a refined, you know, upper crust samurai child, and the other one is like a former farmer faking his way to the top. Mm-hmm. And you just get like such a dynamic across the board of like these parallels and these character foils, and it's great. And this movie also has some like cool action. I mean, I think the final sequence, once it starts raining, is pretty awesome. Like, yeah. Oh man, like when people start dying, when the samurai start dying,
yeah,
it starts getting heavy. Yeah, I mean, basically, like we said, the majority of the movie, though it's 3.5 hours long, I hope it doesn't turn you off of it, but the movie is basically watching these people get the village together, deal with some of the villagers' concerns. Like, one guy's concerned his daughter's going to get raped, and it sort of scares everybody because they're like, oh shit, samurai are known for that. So he has his daughter like cut her hair. He forces his daughter to like cut her hair.
Well, he cuts it for her, I think.
Yeah, I think he like pins her down.
He takes some shears and...
Yeah. And has her pretend to be a boy. And like is like, don't you go near them samurai, who ultimately she ends up being the love interest of the young student samurai. And even that, it falls apart. Like, this movie has such a real ending to me. And I think that's where it wins over Ran. Because Ran just... It felt like at the end of that movie, it just had to have that shitty ending. And, you know, it's sort of a take on King Lear, right? So it has to. But it's... Everything's fine, sort of. You know, everything, they still gotta like
There's like
war.
a sliver of hope
Right.
at the end when he's reunited with his son.
And then
Yes.
then it's gone. It's taken away.
And in this, it's very like they won. Spoilers. They won, but they didn't because the villagers won because they were able to drive the bandits away. But for the samurai, they've lost 4 people.
Mm-hmm. No, Kanbei says it at the best, I think, at the end. He says, victory belongs to the peasants, not to us. I can only hope that's an accurate translation.
And even with the love interests, they don't end up getting together.
Exactly.
She completely
Everything
ignores
is such
him.
and it's so great the way it's done, right? Because like all the farmers are happily farming again. I mean, they're playing music, they're all jiving to it, and the love so to rewind a little bit, the young samurai student and the love interest Shino get it on because I think they're gonna die. It's very much a I don't want to die a virgin moment, and you know they do it, but you know this is like feudal Japan. This is a big no. You don't do this, and father catches them right after they're done, and it's uncomfortable to watch. I mean,
it is. The way he treats her as if she's not a person, but she's just...
Oh, yeah. I mean, she's like stops being his daughter in that moment.
Yes.
And it's so... Because he's calling her a slut. He's calling her a whore. He's calling her all kinds of just horrible things.
And it takes the entire village almost.
Yeah.
And, you know, the samurai to be like, calm down.
Right.
Like, you need to stop this.
It's brutal. And I think it's done...
And it almost...
really well.
I also wanted to touch on the villagers' behavior and how it was kind of barbaric.
Yeah, let's dive into it. The villagers got a lot of problems.
Like, I almost did not like them. I was just like, do we really need to save these people? Because of the way they were acting. Because yes, there were a few of them that actually went out and did something about it. But I guess like towards the middle of towards the end. So when the bandits set fire to the houses.
Oh, to the houses across the bridge or whatever? Yeah.
And you have that old man that is refusing to leave.
He's like, he's already accepted
everybody else is, he's already accepted it. But everybody else, including his family, is like, we need to go get him. And of course, they sacrifice their lives with the exception of one baby who makes it out. And I'm just kind of like, it seems like they only care about themselves because they kind of scatter like cockroaches. And maybe that's what he was trying to get at, because every time something bad happened, they all freaked out and they just started scattering, and there was no uniform like motion to it. They were just like, oh my gosh.
And you see that
they had
so
to have
much,
someone be like, hey guys, this is what we're doing. Go back inside. The bandits are here.
Mm-hmm. And you see that a lot throughout the movie. I mean, you have that scene that you talked about. You have another scene where I think so not everybody who lives in the village lives like on the same side of the river or whatever. And the 3 people that ultimately get their houses burned down who live on the other side of the river at some point are like, fuck this. We're going to protect our own house. Fuck you guys. Like, cause they're basically saying, the samurai say, everyone has to stay here. We cannot defend both. The river's too defensible. We can't defend that side. So you got to hang here. And they're like, fuck that shit. We're not doing that.
And that causes one of the samurai to
it causes our main head samurai to like really come down on him. And I mean, like, part of me was like, good, because everybody's, they throw their spears to the ground. They basically say, fuck you, we're going to do this ourselves. And he pulls out his sword and gets in front of me and he's like, get back in line right fucking now. And they're just like, whoa, like they get scared again and go back. And I think it's such a, I don't even know how to describe it other than this, is like,
and maybe not cockroaches, but just ants. Because, right, you have to have someone that tells you what to do and how to do it. And that's how these people were acting the entire film. Mm-hmm. The samurai were the, leaders,
they're like the conscience here. They're like this common sense, really.
Yeah, it's like they didn't have a conscience. They couldn't think for themselves. They couldn't think about anything besides like, we're hungry, we're poor.
Well, I think it kind of highlights in a way, like, and maybe this is it hitting me, but it highlights kind of the futility of like individualism, in the sense that like I'm going to do what's best for me. Damn everybody else, whatever is good for them. Because I think when you get those scenes that we're talking about here, it's right after these scenes of like victory and hype, and everybody is like ready. Like they're holding the villagers, are like holding their spears, and they're like, we can actually do this. And the minute they go, we can do this, is the minute at least a handful of them go, you're right, I can do this. Why do I need all of you? And they go to do their own shit. And I think the point, I would like to think the point that Kurisawa is trying to put across in that sense is you are part of a group, which, if I understand correctly, is kind of a very cultural thing in Japan. Like, you are part of a group. You have to help the group. And yes, you can do this, and that's great. Like, it's better to do it as a whole than separate. And the minute you start just doing it for yourself is the minute that you might not be able to do it anymore. Like, you can do so many things because the group is working together. The minute you decide to stop is the minute it doesn't really work anymore. You're not Superman running around with a spear able to kill everybody. The only reason you were able to do that was because the samurai taught you how to do it. And you have a team of villagers behind you. You're more than welcome to go defend your village house by yourself, but we also need you. And you said you were going to help. So like, you got to own up to that. Like, you can't put that kind of dishonor on everybody and just bail. Because you will die and will lose people, and it doesn't help anybody. And I like that because I don't know, I think today you get a lot of this sense of like, well, who cares what I do or whatever. And, I'll do whatever I want to do, and you guys, fuck all everybody. I don't care. If I die, who gives a shit? It's my decision. Or if you guys die, it's not my problem. And it's like, well, what if you die and we die? I'm sure there's lots to say on that note as far as current climate goes, at least while we're recording this. But I mean, I think it's such an interesting thing because like Citizen Kane, there's a lot to be drawn out of that that's still practical and still like applicable today. I do also want to say, on my note of the everything going into its another useful scene, you bring up the old man in the house, and the only survivors of the little kid, the baby. That scene goes perfectly right into Kikuchio's character arc, because he's holding that kid and he goes, oh my God, this kid is me.
Yes.
My house was burned down by bandits, and I was the only survivor, and my whole family died, and I was stuck alone. And it's just like, holy shit. Like, that goes beyond just this individual versus the group thing and goes right into some character development. And it's really well done because you don't really see him break down. You just see him get really mad, really goofy. And in that river in front of the fire, he's just holding a kid, crying into the kid's shoulder. And you see that a lot throughout this movie. I mean, you
do, like futile attempts to save a wife that has become a concubine to these bandits, even though she is completely not there and just goes back to the burning hut, and they're telling him, no, it's like, too late, which causes, another member of the party to die.
Yep.
And on top of, like, basically, he just kind of drops to his knees, and he's not only mourning for his wife, but he's mourning for that guy
and himself.
He basically got killed.
I think he's mourning a little for himself because he's realizing it's his fault.
Yes.
Like, he would not have died if he didn't, because that scene goes on a lot longer than it should.
Yes.
I mean, not that it needs to be cut. I just mean it in the sense that he's standing, continuing, like, poking the fire. Like, I'm going to go in, I'm going to go in, I'm going to go in. And by the time, I can't remember which samurai it is, by the time our samurai gets to him to pull him back, he's not going in. I mean, it's clear at that point, you're not going in. You just can't come to terms with it. Or at the very least, she's already dead. And he gets shot by a musket as a result. And it's just like they carry him as far as they can, and he dies. And then that's the first samurai to go. The next one up is because Kikuchio decides, I'm going to be a hero. And I'm going to go steal their last musket. And he goes and he does. And he's successful. And it's a pretty cool scene. But it's such a great way of shooting it because it's a fun sequence to watch. He pretends to be a bandit and he sits next to the sniper and they're just having a chat and he goes, yeah, I'll probably take him down. And he's like, wait, what? Oh my God, you're that dude. And then like he chases him down, kills him, takes the
Yeah.
Musket runs away, brings all these guys back. Like, they're all chasing him, and he shoots at them, and they scatter. And then as a result, he abandoned his post, and the only person who was watching it is our kind of really sad farmer who's crying over the rice, who ultimately dies. And so the bandits overrun them for a minute, and a lot of people die. Like, it's a heavy deal, including Gorobe, another samurai. Like, he dies because they have to stop them. And it's all because Kikuchiyo, again, you have somebody who's like, I'm going to do this selfish act for myself, for me. Fuck all to the group. It doesn't matter. And in their mind, it's like, yeah, okay, you take out their last musket, but at what cost? Like, you're not thinking of everyone. You're thinking of yourself.
Yeah.
And this movie, I think, does a lot to sort of display that, because it's not, like, I think you bring up a good point with the villagers and how they act. And, like, do they deserve this? I mean, they're killing samurai, for Christ's sake.
They are. Like, that scene was pretty...
That was...
intense, because they tell them... They could have used that guy for so many things, and they probably would have had a better outcome. Maybe, maybe not. But the villagers were so ready to just, you know, have that old lady avenge her son's death, which at that point he's been dead for a while, I'm assuming, because he died at the last raid that occurred. Yeah. But they're just ready to kill this guy, and at some point, like, there's only 7 samurai, and they can't do anything about it.
Well, to me, I was kind of wondering, like, is that a cultural thing? Because everybody... So I was talking a little bit back, but yeah, the scene you're talking about, they capture a bandit, one of the scouts, and they want to know where their fort is and shit.
Yeah.
And earlier in the movie, you learn of this really elderly woman who has lost her whole family to these bandits. And she's basically alone, blind and dying and stuff. Like, she is so frail and old. And all the villagers, every single one of them is like crawling over each other. Like, they want to kill this guy to get revenge. And it's this one bandit who, you know, is a bandit, but, you know, they're putting all the blame of an entire village on this one dude, as if he did it single-handedly. And they hold everybody back, and this little old woman comes in, and she has like a, I don't know, rake or pitchfork or something, and she has it like raised above her head, and she's really slowly just shuffling along. And everybody gets quiet. And it's another powerful scene, because they're like, let it be hers.
Yeah.
Like, they took literally everything from her. And part of me is kind of like, fine, like, whatever. That she, of anyone, deserves it. And I'm kind of thinking, like, is this a cultural thing? Like, getting vengeance, renewing your honor, that kind of sort of stereotype people hear about? Because if so, then fine. But they don't let it happen until they get information out of her. What I was talking about is when Kikuchiyo finds all the spears and armor and weapons, because these farmers have been killing poor samurai who've been coming through their village and taking all their shit and hoarding it. And you see the samurai almost decide to say, fuck you, and leave.
Yeah.
And I don't know, what would you have done? Would you have left?
I probably would have left right then and there, because that was the most repulsive thing, I guess, that came out of the film. Like, when I realized what that meant, like, first they were like, why do you have all this shit?
Oh, I know.
And then he realizes, you know, because he was excited at first about, you know, finding all this shit, but they're just like, you know where they got it from, right? They got it from killing samurai. Yep. And he was like, he got really pissed about it. And I don't blame him, because...
Well, it's so shit. I mean, that's not...
It is shitty.
It's shitty, but it's so much more than just shitty. It's like, it's repulsive. It's you have the audacity to go find samurai, and I think it summarizes everything about the villagers at the start of the movie, and maybe even at the end, kind of really well. It's when you need us, the samurai, you come and you find us, and you beg and plead and give us, you know, what little you have, even though later Kikuchiyo is right. They've been hoarding sake and all kinds of fancy food and shit, and they throw a little party the night before the final battle. And they even go, the samurai even goes as far as to say, is they're like, I guess Kikuchiyo was right. Like, they are hoarding this shit.
They made us believe that they were so poor that they didn't have anything.
Right.
When in reality, they probably had like
Well, they clearly had plenty.
Yeah.
And they even ask, where'd you get this? And they're just like, ha. And it's like,
did you steal that too? Like, are you no better than like the bandits?
And that's the question, isn't it? Like, by the end of this movie, the villagers, yeah, they win. But when you look at everything, they were hoarding food. They killed all these samurai in the past. They hoarded all their shit. And I think it's even down to when Shino, the love interest, snubs the young samurai guy, who was like, it's not like he raped her. It's not like he took advantage of her even.
No,
like, he didn't want to do this.
He was very naive, if anything.
Yeah,
like,
but I mean, there's a scene where she gets mad at him.
Yeah.
Like, she goes and she's trying to get it on, and she goes to kiss him and he won't. And she goes like, act like a samurai, damn it. And like, it's really like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why are you doing it? And he kind of looks, and then of course,
or trying to guilt trip him about being, a samurai. Like, oh, I wish I was a samurai like you. And
it's just, but it boils out to be like, I don't know. I mean, I guess like, I know maybe I'm interpreting it differently, because the way I look at him is he loves her, and he has intercourse with her.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, it's not him being like, yeah, I'm the man. I got it on. I got my dick wet. I don't need to pay attention to this girl no more. It's he goes to talk to her. I mean, you can very clearly see like he feels bad that he did what he did, outside of marriage and all that in the course of the movie. But like he goes to talk to her about it, to like confront her about this. Who knows? Maybe he's like, come with me. Maybe he's like, let's try to make this work. Like, I love you, whatever.
Yeah.
She just snubs him. Like, she takes one look at him in like horror and then just runs off to keep farming. And it's almost like I guess maybe to me, when you add that in with the way the villagers act about everything else in this movie, that's just another action of, I did this selfish thing for me. And it's such a interesting power play. And I don't just mean because like a woman arguably taking advantage of this man, but like a class thing is in this society. They even go so far as to constantly tell you like a samurai guy with a farmer girl, like that's not a thing. And this girl does it. And it does it to him. And it's like, maybe she didn't take advantage of him. Maybe in that moment she did love him. But at the end of the day, Kanbei says it right, is like they lost. Not only did they lose 4 of their compatriots, but like his student had his heart broken. And like, this villagers kind of just took stuff from the samurai.
Yeah.
The samurai got very little. They got food and a place to stay while they did it. And it's sort of like at the end, it turned out that the villagers had shit they could have given them, but they didn't. And you wind up with sort of a question of, were the villagers, like you said, any better than the bandits? The bandits are pretty shit. Not gonna lie. I mean, they got concubines who would rather die than live anymore with the bandits, but it's like wolves in sheep's clothing almost, And Kikuchiyo kind of foreshadows that. He's like, farmers are garbage, da 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 da. They'll take everything and they hide stuff, and everyone's like, they're just stupid farmers. Like, what? No. And he's right, because he was a farmer and he lived that life. Yeah. But I mean, this movie, it's just, there's so much.
For some reason, being a samurai, you have more integrity than that.
And that's another good point.
Because the samurai ended up being, the good guys. So right. Everything that they were supposed to be, that the villagers accused them of, they weren't.
Right.
They didn't rape all the women.
Yep.
They didn't steal anything.
But you do see other samurai who do that when they're looking around.
Yes.
The rich and well-to-do samurai are all like, fuck you guys, I don't need to help you.
Yeah.
I mean, you do see what they're talking about, and maybe that's where it's highlighting that an individual person is different, Like, it's good to work for the group, but at the same time, you can't judge everybody based on the actions of a few. I think when it comes down to it, though, I got one question I kind of have for you is, by the end of this movie, if you were one of the samurai, you're one of the 7 who survives, so you're one of the 3 guys left, would you regret helping these villagers?
Yes, I think I would.
Why? Like, what makes you, after watching everything, after you put yourself in the shoes of Kanbei, you led this thing.
I think the regret would come from, because it's like someone who tells you it's like someone lying to you about themselves, you know, like you're
Right.
getting catfished, basically. So
That's a good way, modern way to put it.
in our modern day world. So you go on to like Tinder or something and someone says, "Oh, like, you know, I'm not well to do. Like I'm a hardworking person. You know, I do my best every day.
I swear to God, I'm 6 feet tall.
Yeah, I swear to God, I'm 6 feet tall." And you go and meet them and you realize they're not 6 feet tall. They're actually pretty narcissistic.
Yeah, they're a bougie
and,
5'5" person that lives in the mom's basement.
and they go around driving like a Range Rover or some shit. So I feel like that's how I view these like villagers. Like if I was the samurai at the end, that's how I would feel. I would feel like I just got catfished by these villagers who were saying we were poor when in reality they weren't. They were probably fine.
Right.
And that they needed help when they just sacrificed a lot of my men when it could have been avoided. Like they took a lot of preemptive measures in order to make sure, you know, that they didn't have too many casualties. Obviously, they knew there was a chance that somebody would die. Or maybe, you know, more than one person would die. But there were things that they, at least the villagers did, that caused unnecessary harm to people.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I agree with what you're saying. I don't know if I would regret helping them, because at the end of the day, it does come off as you have to pick between the lesser of two evils, you know, when you go into it.
But then again, you had the choice of not helping them, just like every other samurai. And that doesn't make you any less...
But, hey, Star Trek quote right here. I'm going to butcher it, but to paraphrase Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise, it's possible to do nothing and still lose. That's not a mistake. That's just life. Or it's not fair. It's just life. And I think that this summarizes it. They could have said no. And that would have made them selfish and shitty and dishonorable and like, you know, immediately, regardless of who the villagers are, because you don't know. I think by the end of it, I wouldn't regret helping the villagers, but I would definitely have a new look on everything, because you could argue that maybe just by a hair, the villagers are slightly better than the bandits. Because at the end of the day, they're not out hunting and killing people.
And that's what I was thinking. Like, they almost came out worse than, like, the samurai themselves.
And you gotta wonder, I mean, now they do know how to hunt and kill people. You know, like, now they are organized.
So they won't need these samurai to fend for themselves.
And you gotta wonder, is that good or is that bad?
And will they continue to kill samurais and take their stuff?
Like, how long until they become the bandits? You know? These poor farmers, well, what if they decide we want more? And, oh, yeah, we are, like, sort of organized and have these weapons. I mean, you know, you start reaching at that point. But it presents an interesting thought, because it's like...
Because they didn't seem grateful at the end. They just seemed glad to be alive.
By the end, they all but ignore
because
the
you know,
samurai.
at the end, when you have the hero that saves the town or whatever, they always come up to that person and they're like, yay, so and so did this for us.
It's like the end of Willow.
And you don't get that. It's just them, you know, congratulating themselves, basically.
And it's that's like, a great point.
Without these samurai, you'd be dead.
Yeah. They just sit there and they're like, we did a good job, hooray, hooray, go us. And they're farming, but it highlights it so well, is they're not like disorganized farmers anymore. They're moving in one singular motion. They're getting their stuff planted and they're doing it to the rhythm. And you have this almost militaristic farming going on. And that clearly wasn't the case before. And you got to, again, wonder, you know, I mean, is this a commentary on like Japanese militarism in World War II or something? I don't know. But you do have this. They were disorganized farmers, and now they are most certainly not. What does that mean?
Yeah.
You know, what does that mean for the area? What does it mean for these people? What does it mean for people around them? So this movie brings up so many questions, but one question I have for you, Amber, is out of 10, what are you giving it?
I would give it probably an 8 out of 10. So a solid B.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta give it, honestly, like a 9.7 or 10.
Okay.
Honestly, like this movie is just it. If anything, I know it's long and it is tough. It's not a movie I can just watch because it's 3.5 hours
Yes.
long. It's a long movie. It's a bit of a slog at sometimes. But the fact is, it's done so fucking well. It's like everything you watch is something you should see. It does something. It's not, here's a little gag. It's like, oh, well, that gag we did tells you about that character. It's not just that character's the funny one, so he does it. It's like, there's just so much packed into this that it needs to be 3.5 hours long. Like, this is a movie where I look at it and I'm like, this, good. Anything less than this, except for maybe taking out that 15-minute intermission, but even that helps set the stage for the next scene. It's just done so masterfully well, and it's like it needs to be that long, and there are not many movies that do that. You know, I almost hate. It makes me really hate the Oscars a little bit. Is this movie was nominated for 2 Oscars in, I guess, you know, 1955, a year after it came out or whatever, and it just makes me so angry that we don't get a foreign film winning an Oscar until Parasite. In the last Oscars.
That's crazy.
So like this movie did not win.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which it should have, honestly. Like, even if I feel like it is an 8 out of 10, like, I definitely think in terms of other films probably during that time, it just blows it out of the water. It sets the standards. Like, I think I was reading that it's set, because this was Japan's, like, biggest blockbuster movie during that time. And probably, like, for, you know, all movies at this point. Maybe, like, yeah, actually, yeah, for Japan, this is probably their biggest film of all time. And it set the standard for other movies, not even, like, within the country. So, like, Magnificent Seven in America.
No, I agree. I mean, it's so... It has such an impact... It's almost insulting that it didn't win. It was nominated for 2 Oscars. Best Art Direction and Set Decoration for a black and white movie by Takashi Matsuyama. And Best Costume Design for a black and white movie, Kohei Izaki. Kohei Izaki loses to the Solid Gold Cadillac in costume design.
And to think that the director probably constructed everything in that film.
Well, it definitely
too.
was stuff
Like,
that was on sets.
Okay.
It ended up losing the art direction and whatnot to Somebody Up There Likes Me.
Okay.
You know, but it was nominated. I have to be honest, I haven't seen Solid Gold Cadillac, and I haven't seen Somebody Up There Likes Me. I haven't actually ever heard of either of those movies.
I know, which is weird.
But I mean,
And it makes me think, like,
they're going to say that about
if
us.
it were good,
Yeah.
like, it would have been up there with Orson Welles. Like,
Well, and that's that's the funny thing is they're probably going to say, I mean, they're going to say the same about movies, you know, in 50, or geez, arguably like 40 plus, almost 70 years or whatever.
like they're going to say, why was La La Land?
What was La La Land?
Yeah.
Like, what they're going to be like, what was
And
La La
why
Land?
did they win
you know?
against Moonlight, you know?
They didn't.
Oh, okay.
That's
Take
the
that
joke,
out.
right?
Take
They
that
didn't. But see, at the same time, Moonlight, where's Moonlight? You know, I hear more today about La La Land than I do Moonlight.
That's true.
I arguably haven't seen either of them, but I mean, at the very least, from like a distance level, I hear more about at least the soundtrack of La La Land than I do anything about Moonlight.
Yeah.
Yet Moonlight's the one that won.
Yes.
Doesn't mean it's bad. That doesn't mean it didn't deserve it. It kind of highlights an interesting thing, right? Like, I've never heard of Somebody Up There Likes Me, but I've watched Seven Samurai multiple times. And that's a movie I know people know. Like, so many people know it, and it's so influential. Like, maybe Somebody Up There Likes Me had an influence like that, and I just don't know it. I mean, Citizen Kane was like that. I didn't know how much was inspired by that movie. But I know there are episodes of kids' TV shows constantly that are inspired by this film. Bug's Life is an entire movie for children inspired by this film. It has a lot of impact on our society.
I mean, this goes into what you said about foreign films.
Exactly.
They don't get the recognition.
They don't. And this was...
And even now,
it's
just
been years.
now, we're starting to, like, when we went to AMC, and they were just like, oh, all of these foreign films that are coming out. you should take a look, or you should go and see them. And I was like, some of these actually look very good.
Yeah.
Like, there was one that was in Spanish, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. There was
like,
the other,
it was like
the
The
Italian
Traitor
movie too.
or something.
No,
it was an Italian
movie,
film called The Traitor, and I was like, that actually looks pretty good.
It looked very good.
Yeah.
I
but
mean,
you just don't.
Yeah.
It's not like in other countries where they're like, oh, American films, we'll go and see that.
Right.
And they just have, subtitles. Here, it's like, no, we strictly only watch American films.
And I mean, this was the Oscars of 1957. So this movie came out in the U.S. in 56, I believe.
Okay.
So it took a couple of years before it got over here.
Yeah.
But, which a lot of movies back then did when they were made somewhere else. It took a lot of time to get them over into America, probably because people didn't want to watch a movie from Japan or something. But, it's just one of those things where this is in 1957, and in 2019 is the first foreign film to win an Oscar. Kind of like the question of if The Villages are any better than The Bandits. Are the Oscars worth it? In this podcaster's opinion, they're not. But yeah, I mean, as far as your rating for this movie goes, after watching this and having watched Ran, it's been a while, so I'm not going to hold you to trying to remember what you gave Ran, but if you had to rate them between the two, what would be the numbers you'd throw out for each of these movies?
So for Ran and for...
Yeah, so like you gave this one like an 8.2, right?
An 8.
An 8? Okay.
Yeah.
So
and
like
I think Ran
8.
was at least like a 9 or a 10.
Okay. So you and I are kind of flip-flopped.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, see, I appreciate the cinematography of Ran, I think, more than this movie. Because
the
you're
battle
right.
scene Ran was so great. I mean, I'm sorry. It beats out Seven Samurai. Maybe it's because they didn't have one big battle like they did in...
But they did.
In Ran. they
had
did,
a real big
but
battle.
It was, I don't know. It's just that scene where, all these soldiers are storming this kingdom or this like big castle. Like that really left.
Well, that movie was also a decade of production. Like,
that's true.
And
you can tell.
It pays off. No, I mean, Ran, I think
but
it sounds like it
definitely
worked
left
for you.
an impression on me. Like, that's the one thing I think of when I think of Ran.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, if I think of Ran, there's so many things. I mean, that scene where they're burning the castle to the ground and he comes out like a ghost.
And even in the beginning when he's like trying to teach his son something about, having a kingdom.
Yeah.
And having
even the boar hunt scene in the opening of the movie is a masterfully shot sequence where they're chasing the pig around. I mean, Ran is a great movie to me cinematically because it's just like, or in its cinematography, because it's just like, it's so beautiful, it's so well shot, and they did so much effort. It's all filmed in like a place that it's supposed to be, not a set. And in this movie, you clearly see like, yeah, they are outside, they have a little village somewhere, but there are clearly set pieces here. Like we are on a soundstage, perhaps, when we're running around on roofs or something. But it's just that this movie, to me, it's 3.5 hours long, and every second of it, even arguably, even the intermission, is used. There's nothing that's just, I can run to the bathroom, I can go get a beer. The minute you do, the minute you miss something. And you miss part of this movie. And I could definitely see it being played at like Music Box or even where. Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah,
I would love to go see it. I would go see it.
Went to go see like the concerts with the orchestra.
Oh,
like,
that would be
I could totally, I can totally imagine having it there, and everybody takes their intermission and they talk about it.
Right. No,
that's
I would
what
love.
That time is spent.
I'd love to see this movie in theaters. Yeah. No. So. How, regardless of your rating, though, would you suggest people watch this movie in its entirety?
Yeah, I would definitely suggest watching this movie.
I think without a doubt, if you get the opportunity in your life to watch this movie, watch it. I mean, it's such a piece of cinema that, at the very least, inspired maybe even some of your childhood favorite movies. It may have, and that doesn't just mean people who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. I mean, like this impacted a lot. I mean, Magnificent Seven was a movie that happened twice, and people saw that, and it just, there's so many things that this had such a deep impact on movies everywhere in the world that it's still present
And I'm
today.
sure there are military movies too that have the same, like a very similar plot.
Well, I just think, like, you take this movie, which came out in 1954. You take The Mandalorian, that came out this last year, the television series. There's an entire episode that is this movie.
Yeah, basically, where he's saving a town.
Yep, where they save the little village from the leftover bandits that have imperial shit. Like, has such a resonance, I think, and it's such a perfect movie in my mind. There's so little that I don't know if I could think of anything that's wrong with it. It could be shorter, I guess, but at the same time, they use that time, and I think it's such a great film. So with all of that being said, as usual, Amber, what do we have in store for next week?
So next week, we're going to be doing another animated film, Japanese animated film.
We're just living in Japan, aren't we?
Yes, we are living in Japan. They have such great films.
Well, it's how we're escaping the quarantine.
It's really hard not to be lulled to their sweet storylines.
The sweet siren songs of Japan.
But anyways, we'll be covering Perfect Blue, which came out in 1997.
Oh, shoot. And this was made by the same people who did Paprika, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this guy.
Director Satoshi Kon.
Okay. So this guy is going to be another one of those episodes where it's Amber's turn to take the reins and run the show. So look forward to Perfect Blue next week. But in the meantime, as always, I am your host, Thomas.
I'm Amber.
And we'll see you guys next week with Perfect Blue.